well, our guest, Stephen Haden, him, is the founder of Flourish, a groundbreaking wellness app for the LGBTQ plus community. It's slated to launch in 2023. Now, Stephen's also the CEO of Envision You, a Colorado-based nonprofit addressing LGBTQ plus mental health disparities, while serving as a clinician with the queer community as well. He provides vital information and behavioral support as well. And with extensive qualifications, including a bachelor's from the University of Colorado, an MBA from New York University, and an MSW from Simons University, Stephen is dedicated to empowering positive change and well-being. Now, this is a double header tonight, friends, so hold on to your seat. I've got one more introduction. And then we may, I don't know, Stephen, did we save the best for last? Just a little humor to open up our conversation, but maybe so. Our next guest with us tonight is Megan Cliff. She, her. Megan is the program coordinator for Flourish and Envision You, dedicated to empowering recovery and well-being within the LGBTQ plus community. With a BA in sociology from UC Davis and a master's in social work focused on human-animal environment interactions from the University of Denver, Megan brings a holistic approach to her role. Her background includes training as a mental health clinician for those impacted by substance use and the criminal legal system, alongside operational expertise for streamlined project management. Megan's passion lies in building recovery networks, enhancing self-efficacy, and advocating for systemic LGBTQ plus support and change. Wow, a mouthful for me and you too, but I think we did them justice. Friends, can you help me welcome Steve Haden, Megan Cliff from Flourish. Some hearts in the air. Stephen and Megan, welcome to Circles. We're so glad you're here tonight.
Jeff, thank you so much for the introduction, and really grateful for the opportunity to talk with you and be in community with the folks that are joining us tonight for this wonderful conversation.
Yeah, I love it. Megan, how did I do? Okay?
You did great. Thank you for such a warm welcome. We're super excited to be here with you all. And thanks for taking time out of your evening to join us.
Yeah, I love it. I wonder if we could maybe start with Stephen and then Megan. If you could just, I read your professional bio, but I wonder for the sake of our friends here tonight that you could kind of unpack you just a little bit, a little of the highs and lows of your own personal and professional journey, and then kind of what led you into the work that you're so passionate about doing. Stephen, you want to launch us off?
Of course, yeah. So as Jeff mentioned, my name is Stephen. My pronouns are he and him. I identify as part of the queer community. I'm also a person in recovery. I just celebrated 18 years of sobriety from alcohol and drugs. My own mental health journey has been challenging. I grew up in a home that had been touched by mental illness. And as a young person navigating my sexual orientation in a small Midwestern town, I was confronted what would life be like, coming out, particularly in the early 90s as I was coming to age. It was at the time of the AIDS and HIV crisis. So, I did a lot of self-reflection on, what it would be like to be an openly gay person and what life would be for me in environments that are often not very welcoming to people that share my identity. And as I, moved into adulthood, went to work, I've been fortunate to be able to, really be confident in the fact that, similar to the fact that I'm 6 foot and I have brown hair and hazel eyes, I also happen to be gay. And I also happen to be a person with lived experience. And I'm proud of all the identities that I have. And in the work that I get to do today, I really am grateful that my story may lead somebody to have hope on a dark day, that may be challenging and thinking about their own identity in a world that's not always built for us, who have lost hope because of an underlying mental health condition. And so by openly talking about these things, having conversations like we're having today, I really do believe that it provides hope for us, particularly in these really challenging times. And so this is a great opportunity to talk about sort of my journey, the work that we're doing. I can't wait to tell you about You Flourish, our work at Envision You, and how our team is really committed to supporting our friends and family members who are part of the LGBTQ community across the country.
Absolutely love it. Thank you, Stephen. So well done. Megan, I want to give you an opportunity, and then I want to circle back to something that Stephen said that I probably believe you could speak to as well, Megan. But tell us a little bit more about Megan.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Jeff. So hi, everyone. Again, my name is Megan, and I use she, her pronouns. I also want to invite, if anybody would like to and feel comfortable to share their pronouns in the chat, I invite y'all to do that. But again, that is completely your choice and up to you. But so I am also a queer person in recovery. I'll be at 2 years sober from alcohol in December, actually, of this year. Growing up, I also had experiences with caregivers who lived with a substance use disorder. And I think, as my own therapeutic journey progressed, I realized how much more that had affected me than I truly had realized in the moment. And as a result of that and the social anxiety that I manage, I really turned to alcohol as a coping mechanism. And it was a force in my life for a very long time that didn't allow me to show up for myself or the people that I really care about. And so when I finally started doing my own work and had the privilege of finding a therapist that was affirming, who was actually a social worker, that really inspired me to eventually go back to school to become a master's level social worker, which I just finished in June, because I know what it feels like to not know where to turn, and also how great it feels when you find somebody who can be there for you. And ultimately, that is what I try to bring to my work and my personal life as well when I can. And so I met Stephen, got connected with him, and Envision You and You Flourish actually as an intern. And now I'm grateful enough to be working full time towards the well-being of this beautiful community that I get to be a part of. And I am super excited to be here with you all.
I love it. I appreciate the request to, if we feel comfortable, to put pronouns in the chat, which all of our guests tonight have chosen, I believe, to do that. Thank you, Megan. Kind of a question to both of you. You've both expressed a part of your being that was living deep within you, but you never felt able to come out. You never felt able to or comfortable to express that. Either of you, can you address why do you think that is? Is it society? Is it the way we've been brought up? Can any of you speak to why it's such a struggle to be who this authentic person we believe we are?
Sure, I'm happy to share a little bit about my perspective. So Megan and I, we are a few years apart in age, and as I was thinking about my sexual identity, I lived in a small Midwestern town. I was certainly raised in an environment where there was an expectation that I would marry somebody who was the opposite gender as myself, would have kids. And so there was a certain formula that had been expected of me as a young man. And as I started feeling that tension, that was not the path that I saw myself. In fact, I didn't see myself in a straight cisgender relationship. It required a lot of introspection, in part because I wondered, are there other people out there like me? This was before Ellen DeGeneres and her coming out and her daytime television shows. There weren't a lot of out celebrities. There weren't a lot of out role models for me at the time in the entertainment business or in media in general. And so it just felt very lonely. And so part of my journey was figuring out, okay, is this really who I am? Am I attracted to the same gender? Do I think I'm a gay man? And what is life going to be like? And, I think my mother, when I came out to her, she was very loving and supportive, but she had this to say to me, folks. She said, I'm fine with you being gay. I still love you no matter what. But she goes, I wish that just wasn't the case for you because the world is not friendly. It's hostile. It's going to be difficult for you at times. And she's right. Depending on where you live, depending on the type of work you get to do, depending on the type of family that you grow up in, depending on what type of faith practice you have, those are all real considerations. And, sadly, we see that, 30 years later from the day that I came out, we're still seeing a lot of oppressive measures, a lot of pushback, a lot of discrimination and harassment towards our incredible, beautiful rainbow community. And so it's definitely been a journey. And, I'm reminded of my mother's words that, the world is not always going to be welcoming. And that's too bad. That's really unfortunate.
Yeah, well said, Stephen. The world is not always welcoming. I believe that could be universal to people of not only gender but race and beliefs and faith and choices, etc. Right, Stephen? It seems like that presence of judgment exists in our world, and when anybody is not like us, or we feel like there's something wrong with us. Yes.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you touched on that intersectionality piece, which is, all of us are made up with, various identities, right? Race, ethnicity, gender, sexual identity. Where did we grow up? The type of faith community, if we had one. And so it was when you start taking into account all of your intersectional identities, in some cases, those can be protective factors, depending on where you are. In other cases, if you're a Black trans woman living in a small community in the South, chances are you're going to have probably a lot more challenges than a white woman living in that community. And so we just need to be really thoughtful as just humans supporting each other as neighbors. If you're a teacher or if you're work in a workplace with colleagues, I think the opportunity for us is to accept people for who they are and celebrate all of their identities.
Yeah, so well said. Megan, curious, your journey of coming out, difficulties with sharing with family, maybe a little bit of how they responded. And then what I'd really love to touch on is to both you and Stephen, how did you go inward and reconcile that struggle? Megan, thoughts?
Yeah. So I think for me, it was less, I guess, my family and close friends who I've come out to and know that I'm out, I guess, like, it was never that there was any explicit language against that. It was sometimes in those micro things. As a cisgender woman, I identify as the sex that I was assigned at birth, and there's certain roles and norms that can be attached to that. And so it'd be those small comments that I would get, like, "Oh, when are you going to bring a boy home?" Or, "Oh, are you going to the dance with someone like a guy in your class?" It was never an assumption that there was an assumption that I was straight. That at that time, I was exploring potentially being bisexual. And so I think it was kind of in those micro interactions that happen. And then even being an out bisexual person, that can even still happen. Like, "Oh, well, you've mainly only dated men, so you can't be into women. That's not possible." Like, it's just a phase. And I think that invisibility and that erasure of certain identities can really stifle you from wanting to be open and authentic about it, and maybe even scary in terms of looking inwards. So to your next question, I think a lot of it was just reaching out to supports. I do have many parts of my identity that have privilege, including like one of the huge factors in my life is being able to attain higher education. And so when I was in school, I had access to mental health care. And that's when I worked with a provider that was affirming of me, and created space for me to start doing that introspection and use her as a sounding board and a collaborator to actually talk through those things, and even like role play certain conversations that might be scary, like when you're coming out in that process, or even just when you encounter someone who might be saying something that's erasing a part of you, because that really hurts. So
Yeah, so well said. Friends, thank you so much for being here. Are you enjoying the conversation already? A little heart in the air if that speaks to you. I know it is to me. I really appreciate it. Shell, we saw you pop in, and we're so thankful that you've joined us. Stephen, Megan, whoever wants to take this kind of question, um, what should our community or society, I'm trying to figure out how to phrase the question. What should a society that does not know about or even feel like they don't support the LGBTQ plus community, what do they need to know about this special community that would change their mind and maybe not cause them to judge so much? Anybody want to take that on? That's a little bit deep, but I think you both could handle that question.
Yeah, I think it's a really important question, Jeff, to think about. Part of it is thinking about that from promoting understanding and empathy. So I always start there, and I realize that all of us are on our own unique journey. And depending on where we were raised, what were some of the messages that we were left with? What was the worldview that was taught to us as young people? What were the environments that taught us those important life lessons as a young person? And so as we move into adulthood, we all have biases. Some are more harmful and some are more hurtful, but certainly we all have them. And part of, I hope, each of our journeys together as people who share humanity and share a planet together is that we're willing to do some of that work to explore what those biases are. And I think that's where the work really, the really important work happens, to start cultivating a willingness to look at things a little differently, to consider that maybe that transgender person who lives down the street, maybe I don't understand their identity. Maybe I don't necessarily share their same political views. Maybe we don't attend the same place of worship. And maybe we vote differently, but we have shared humanity. And I want that person to thrive as much as I want my neighbor on the right of me to thrive. And I think so it starts with just promoting understanding and empathy, asking for some patience and grace, and be willing to gently guide people. I like to think about this in terms of guiding people towards a light, right? The light of revelation, the light of knowledge, the light of compassion. And if we can do that in a way that's not threatening or hostile, it doesn't mean that we have to be with people who are harmful to us. By no means am I suggesting that. But what I am suggesting is that when we find people who maybe just don't understand us, maybe don't completely really understand the beauty of the LGBTQ community, but they're willing to listen, let's guide them. Let's show them that light.
Yeah, very well said. Very eloquent. And I love sharing the light. Light is the reflection, the epiphany, the awareness, the aha moment, right, Stephen? That happens within the human soul or spirit or mind, wherever you call it happening. But to me, I used to be this way. But now, based upon this new information that I just received and accepted, so I have to receive it and accept it in order for it to open me to go, oh my God, maybe I didn't know. And therefore, maybe I did judge, right? So
Yeah.
well said.
Well, and maybe just two other points. When we can encourage open conversations and we actively listen to personal stories and experiences, that humanizes people who are different than us, right? And that leads to greater acceptance. So I think it also really stems from a place of that active listening and being willing at times to maybe sit with some discomfort with somebody who maybe doesn't fully accept and celebrate who you are, but listen and understand, and then share your incredible experience with them, and knowing that LGBTQ folks throughout history have made incredible impacts in politics and art and science. And we've been here all along. We're here today and we're not going anywhere tomorrow.
Yeah. We've been here all along and we're not going anywhere tomorrow. Such a powerful statement. Well said. Megan, your thoughts on this little bit of mini conversation that we're having?
Yes. That phrase needs to be like on a poster or a t-shirt or something, Stephen.
I agree.
I think what feels very salient to me right now is just that whole idea of sitting with discomfort. And I think part of that too is being open to making mistakes and honoring the fact that mistakes are going to happen. And also recognizing that there is intentional harm that people will unfortunately cause. Then there's also that impact versus intent. That what you say may not land like you want it to, but when it doesn't land, actually make an intentional effort to restore that mistake and then commit wholeheartedly to do better and then do better the next time. And I think that can also help facilitate dialogue with folks who may have differing perspectives than you. And then bigger picture, like what we can do to your question was advocacy, continuing your education, whether you're a mental health provider. I don't know if there's anybody in the audience that is, but seeking out perspectives that aren't like yours so that you can better understand who you're working with, advocate for better representation within media, within places of leadership, within your organizations to ensure that other perspectives are being included in the conversation and more people are being brought to the table.
Yeah, I love that very much. I know we had a new guest join us, Rose the Hunter. It's good to have you here. We're talking about the LGBTQ community, and not only that, but really around mental health that deals with this special community. We're joined by Stephen Haden and Megan Cliff. We're deep in the conversation, but hold on. I think we're going to go just a little bit deeper. A couple of things that struck me, Stephen and Megan, when you were talking, and I wrote on my notes. I love what you said, Stephen. We've shared humanity. I think it takes us getting out of ourselves in order to share humanity, right? Regardless of what experience we've had, what our position we've had or is, but it takes us laying down what we think we know in order to be open to what someone else might know in order to experience that. I wonder if you could talk, and I wonder if you could just hold on to your question or comment just for me for a little bit while we dive a little bit deeper, and then we're going to get to some Q&A in just a half a second. I would appreciate that. I wonder, Stephen, if you could talk a little bit about YouVersion, how it developed, how it evolved, and kind of where it is today, and what its mission is. Would you be able to go there for us?
Of course. So as I shared at the start of our conversation tonight, I'm a person with lived experience, and I made a decision midway through my career to leave business consulting in New York City, and I moved to Denver, went to work for a community mental health center while I was getting my master's in social work. And as a gay man in recovery and really taking a look at the impact that mental health issues had on so many LGBTQ folks, the disparities, and then the gaps in finding the resources and services that are necessary to heal and to thrive in community. I thought that why not? Why not start a nonprofit. And it's a phrase I'll share with you all. My grandfather always used to say to me when I was young, that was one of his favorite phrases when you were, talking about doing something. He'd say, "Why not? Go out there, put your shoes on. Why not? Why can't you be the person that does that?" And so that really inspired me when I started Envision You, the nonprofit based here in Denver, Colorado, about 6 years ago. And our focus is on improving the mental health and well-being of the LGBTQ plus community. And a few years ago, as the whole world dove into the darkness of the COVID pandemic, we conducted some research with an outside. We conducted some research with an outside firm, and we were really startled by the significant despair and loneliness that so many people in our community, the LGBTQ community, were experiencing, and also just the challenges that so many folks had in trying to find an affirming and culturally relevant mental health professional. So the idea for You Flourish was born at that time. So over the last 24 months, we've had the pleasure of working with community groups, researchers at a couple of different universities, and a tech incubator to figure out how do we build a solution, the product's called You Flourish, that we feel very confident is going to support the well-being of our users. And we've done that with research. We've done that with technology folks who know how to design an app that's very user-friendly. We want it to be a joyful experience for our community. And we want to ensure that when you come to You Flourish to find community, information, connection, that's going to support your ability to thrive in life. And that's Megan's commitment, my commitment, the whole team at both You Flourish and Envision You. We talk about it every day when we get to the office. How can we work towards moving so many people in our community from a place of surviving to thriving? And that's what we hope You Flourish will do when it launches early next year.
Oops, I love it. Megan, your thoughts, maybe kind of what drew you to You Flourish and your involvement in supporting the company and the vision?
Yeah, for sure. So, I think I said this earlier, but I started as an intern on the nonprofit side of things that Stephen mentioned in Vision U. And that's how I got introduced to the team at You Flourish. I think going into this work, I didn't fully realize just how connected mental health and technology are in terms of solutions to helping folks, right? And I think we saw a lot of that more come out in the pandemic, especially the height of it, and just the sense of belonging that we all want to have as humans in connection with other people, and how sometimes that is not always possible in person. Sometimes that has to go virtual. And I'm really grateful that we have those advancements to be able to do that. I also think because I'm trained as a social worker, entering this space, it was a little bit intimidating to me, just because I don't know too much about, the technology side of things as it relates to creating something like a wellness platform. But I like a challenge. So I help a lot with operations on our team as well as social media, and also a newsletter that we have to keep everybody up to date. And also just helping with tabling events that are related to Envision You, as well as our provider training program, to create more culturally relevant and affirming care.
Yeah, I love it. I wonder, and again, those of you that are joining us tonight, thank you so much. I see a hand in the air. If you could just lower that for me, we're going to get to questions in just a little bit, but I still want to stay kind of on track. And then we're going to open up our mic in just a half a second. Thank you so much. Stephen, I wonder if you could address what you believe are kind of some of the very difficult mental health issues around our LGBTQ plus community. And I think it's going to give our users, it's going to give our listeners a little bit more depth as to why you feel it's so important to create these resources around the topic of mental health, specifically for the community?
Of course. Yeah. Thanks, Jeff. So first, I want to be clear, because throughout history, certainly within the last 50 years, um, being part of the LGBTQ community was a pathology. It was a disorder. American Psychological Association considered being homosexual, which is the word used at the time, to be a disorder. And so when I talk about the mental health issues impacting the community, I want to first acknowledge that we do have this history of being pathologized, being seen as there's something wrong with you, right? It's a disorder that you have. And that narrative can still be found around kitchen tables, conference rooms, and clinics around the US, sadly, today. So I want to acknowledge that. But I also want to point out, and this is really important, that there is an area of research called adverse childhood experiences. And I won't get too much into research because I know y'all will turn out, but I'll bear with me just for a minute. And it looks at the number of traumatic events that happen to a young person. It's whether you're LGBTQ or have any other of the identities that you possess. And the number of those adverse childhood experiences, as that number goes up, you're at much greater risk for mental health concerns as well as physical health concerns. We know that the greater prevalence of adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs, lead to a higher prevalence of chronic illness. It impacts quality of life, and it often decreases life longevity. So it has really profound impacts. And what we know is that young LGBTQ individuals experience adverse childhood experiences of rates at 2 to 4 times greater than our straight counterparts. So a significant amount of trauma. And when you think about discrimination and bullying, harassment, physical assault, a lot of terrible things happen to young people who identify as part of the LGBTQ community. Maybe their family isn't affirming. Sadly, a large percentage of unhoused youth identifies LGBTQ plus. And so when you grow up in those environments that are hostile to you, or you turn on the evening news and you're having someone talk about erasing your identity, it's not a surprise that you're experiencing this type of trauma. So as you move into adulthood, we see the higher rates of anxiety and depression and substance use. We see greater rates of eating disorder, thoughts of suicide. And because of those early experiences that create such a profound impact on our mental health, as we age into adulthood, we're then faced with, gosh, I've got these things I need to take care of, but now I can't find a mental health provider who gets me, right? Megan talked a little bit about that a few minutes ago. Mental health provider who is going to respect me, accept me, and care for me regardless of my identity. And this isn't about checking a box and saying I'm welcome to serve LGBTQ folks. This is about mental health providers, medical professionals doing the work, taking the training, working with the community, getting to understand these issues, including the prevalence of trauma. So there's a reason that we see these higher disparities, 2 to 3 times greater rates of anxiety, depression, the substance use disorders. It's because of this early trauma. And then when you consider that our ability to find affirming help is often more challenging, it's not a surprise then that so many people in our community find themselves in crisis. And so we have the opportunity, each of us here tonight, to create and go back into our communities and think about, how do I support and celebrate those young people who are coming of age in these difficult circumstances, so we can set them on a path of hope and not fear.
Yeah, so very well said. looking for affirming help. Beautifully said, Stephen. I'm going to go really, I don't know if there's anything else on the other side of the deep end, but if there is, I'm about to go there. So hold on to your seats, friends. Stephen, Megan, question for you. I've often wondered, this affirming help that we desperately need to heal, to find hope, to grow, is it only within the community who gets us, who is like us? Or is there any benefit from actually seeking help from a community who is not like us? And if that's true, what needs to be a factor, a quality within that support system that could truly reach and help us? Does the question make sense, Stephen, Megan?
It does. Megan, do you want to share a few thoughts? And then I'm happy to give my perspective.
Yeah, I'm just marinating in that question. No, I think the ideal situation is that we have more people who don't share the identity, let's say, as being identifying as LGBTQ plus, that are showing up as advocates and allies in support and alongside of community members. And that includes, not just asking to be educated like on our identity, but, doing internal work about maybe implicit biases that are subconscious that we don't even realize. And I also think that's one of the goals too of You Flourish and Envision You on the mental health, behavioral health side, is if we can equip more people within the care systems with affirming care and an understanding of unique experiences faced by the queer community and the resilience that the queer community has, that can be just better care all around. And I think also create more empathetic providers, which is also never a bad thing, a more empathetic society, which I think Stephen was speaking to earlier, patient and empathetic one. Stephen, do you want to add anything?
Sure. Yeah. And maybe for folks joining us tonight, I'll provide just a little context about what we think affirming care is. So, affirming mental health care refers to a very specialized approach when our mental health providers, counselors, and other care professionals create a supportive and validating environment for us that respects and acknowledges our unique identities, experiences, and needs. And this is really important. This is crucial, particularly when working with communities that have socially stigmatized or disadvantaged identities. And so just wanted to sort of kind of set that as sort of like how we defined affirming care. Very specifically to your question, Jeff. So what we know is that more than 75% of our mental health care practitioners, and the number may change depending on the research that you look at, but it's right around there, identify as white, straight, cisgender women. And so what we know is that majority of the folks in our country don't hold that identity. And so we're not going to change the makeup of the workforce tomorrow, but what we can do is start early, encourage people to think about this as a career so we can diversify the workforce. And in the meantime, we can hold high expectations for all of our mental health providers, whether they identify as part of the LGBTQ community or not, whether they're a person of color or not. We want the folks that are seeking care not necessarily to share the identity of the patient. Sometimes that's helpful. And in fact, I've had clients in my practice say that's not even important to them. But what's important is that they know they're going to have a safe and non-judgmental environment. They're in a space where they can talk about their life and share everything that's going on and feel comfortable doing that They know I'm going to provide tailored mental health support that's unique to their identity, and that throughout our work, I'm going to validate who they are throughout our work. And I think that's what I hope that every care professional who are often overwhelmed and overpaid, and I understand the conditions that so many folks are finding themselves working at can be really challenging. So I want to acknowledge that, and I want to ask our care professionals to step up in a way that invites folks that don't share their identity to find that safety, that non-judgmental environment, a place where they get that kind of respect for who they are.
Yeah, so well said. What I love about tonight is that due to the fact that we're actually recording the conversation, I think is brilliant, Stephen and Megan, and those of you that are attending, because the message lives on. It lives on, and it can still reach, it can still touch, and it can still teach long after we are even gone, right? One of the greatest things I think about technology. I really appreciate you clarifying, Stephen, because as you were talking, I remember my experience as a hospice chaplain. Now, I grew up in a particular faith, of course, which kind of at first in my work, I felt the pull, and help me with this, Stephen and Megan. I felt the pull to lean into those who I met who were like my faith. I felt uncomfortable, not uncomfortable in a negative way, but uncomfortable in an uneducated way to how to serve people of a different faith. And it took me a while. I spent 20 years in the hospice and palliative care, but it took me a while for me to realize that my true essence was presence. And therefore, I could actually let go of everything I thought I knew in order to simply be present with and love unconditionally those that I served. I hear that in both of you, Stephen, and you, Megan. Your message, did I pick up on that clearly? I hear that in your heart, yes?
Absolutely. And Jeff, thank you for your vulnerability and sharing that, because I think it's something that many of us in care professions experience, right? There's that discomfort. Maybe there's some misalignment with the worldview that we were raised with, or a particular perspective, whether it's a faith practice or an identity that we hold close to ours. And so, Megan mentioned earlier being comfortable with the uncomfortable, right? So that's part of it. It's recognizing those biases, trying to figure out, why do I have that view? Where did that come from? Why do I see this particular topic in the way that I do? And so I think that's really fundamental and crucial to the work that we all have the opportunity to do. You don't have to be a licensed professional or a chaplain to be caring and compassionate and kind, right? Those are the things that we hope all of us have the capacity to do. And by being here tonight, I believe each of you are committed to that.
Yeah, very well said. Your thoughts, Megan, kind of along the conversation?
Yeah, I definitely agreed. I think just as a person and a professional, just with the work that we're doing, I just want people to feel seen, and people just want to feel seen and asked about who they are, and not be afraid of the response or the reaction that they're going to get when they're actually vulnerable and share that. And that can feel really scary. And as Stephen was reiterating, like leaning into that discomfort is really hard, and it takes practice. I practice it almost every day, it feels. But I think that's just one small commitment that we can make in stepping closer to building more belonging and safety for people within the community and those around us, especially those who are different from us.
Yeah, Absolutely love it. I wrote a note on my paper when the two of you were talking. It was a question that I asked: am I living my choice or the choice that was made for me? And I think,
That's powerful, Jeff.
yeah, my heart's soft tonight. I don't know why, folks, but it is. Maybe that's that compassion, Stephen, and maybe a desire to help people who don't feel like they fit in, let them know there is a place that they can fit in. Maybe.
I think so. And you said it so eloquently, and Megan touched on it as well. How powerful it is that we can give somebody a sense of belonging and community and to know they're not alone. That is an incredible gift that we get to give to somebody else. And again, you don't have to be a professional. You just have to share humanity with the person that you encounter at the coffee shop, the person you sit next to at work or ride the bus with. Um, let's lean in. Let's lean into that discomfort and be there for the people in our lives in a way that maybe we didn't think that we had the capacity to do so. But I'm convinced that when we can push through some of that discomfort, Jeff, we find ourselves being able to be more vulnerable and to be more open to new experiences.
I truly appreciate you both. Thank you so much. And those of you who are here on this conversation, um, I know it seems like there's a few, but I believe the message is reaching the many. We've got a few minutes left. Would you believe I told you guys this time would go by so fast? And would you believe it's almost gone? But Stephen, Megan, I really want you to take the time that we have left and just tell the people who are listening here on this call and those who will listen afterward, what is the focus of You Flourish, Envision You? How are you making this social impact, and how can people get involved in this work that you are doing? Can you share a little bit about that?
Of course, I'm going to return just for a quick minute to our introductions and sharing that I'm a person with lived experience with my own mental health journey. And that is what gets me up every single day and passionate about this work, that we can build a tool, we can build programs and services that are going to help people either get on a path of recovery, support their journey, to navigate grief and difficulty and hard times. That's what we're committed to doing. And we've companies go through all sorts of, branding exercises on how to find the right name for a company. And so, You Flourish is indeed, that is our commitment. We want each of you, we want our beautiful community to flourish. And so when you are able to download the app early next year, you're going to be able to find features that allow you to engage with wellness content that's created by and for queer folks. You'll find resources that are affirming. You'll be able to find a mental health professional or medical provider who's demonstrated a level of capacity and training to support and provide that affirming care we've been talking about. And we're also going to be working with the team here at Circles to create opportunities to build peer connections so that you can lean into that mutual aid and community and find belonging, because you do belong and you do matter. And what I will say, as a person who survived suicide nearly 20 years ago, had reached my darkest point and despair in my life, I'm here today. It's a gift. I'm so grateful I get to do this work. And I hope each of you, if you find yourself in a dark place, just know there are people like Megan and I and Jeff, the team here at Circles, our team at You Flourish. We care so much about you, and there is hope for a better day.
Wow. I think we just need to honor that. There's a spiritual phrase, Selah, pause and reflect on this. I'm so excited that you mentioned that, Stephen. Friends, those of you that are listening here tonight, Stephen and Megan and You Flourish is making their debut tonight on the Circles app, but this isn't the end. This is just the beginning. They're going to be on the app Thursdays at 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, right here on the Circles app. And they're going to be talking about You Flourish, the LGBTQ plus community, mental health. It's a plethora of information and education and support. So what I'm really asking you all to do is go start spreading the word that Circles also embraces, cares for, and is making safe space for our LGBTQ plus community. And we're bringing on people who have dedicated their life and their mission to making safe spaces. I don't know about you, friends, but I believe that collectively together, we can save lives and we can make people feel comfortable in coming out in whatever capacity that means to them. Stephen, Megan, we've only got a minute or so left. I wonder if each of you could take this time to share your last comments, your last thoughts about our conversation, and then maybe share some things that could really inspire our listeners tonight. Would you do that?
Sure. Megan, I'd like to invite you in if you're comfortable to start.
Yeah, for sure. I think I just kind of want to end this on just expressing gratitude for everybody who joined. Something about this inspired you to come, and I hope you got a nugget out of it that you were looking for. And also thank you to Jeff for just the commitment here to expand more inclusive spaces for the LGBTQ plus community. Yeah, I think I'll end it with that. I'm just feeling extremely grateful to be here with you all.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to wrap up tonight. And again, grateful to be with you all soon. But yeah, to those who find themselves in the midst of struggles, I just want you to remember that your journey is marked by incredible strength and resilience. Every challenge you face is an opportunity for growth and transformation. And just as the darkest night eventually gives way to dawn, your difficulties will pave the way to a brighter day, as it did in my own life. I want that for each of you. I hope you will join us over the next 8 weeks for more conversations about promoting the mental health and well-being of the LGBTQ plus community.
Yeah, so well said. Absolutely. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Megan. Thank you, Anne and Shell and Lori and Bernie. Those of you that have joined and then kind of went your own way, thank you for taking time to join us tonight. Friends, I've dropped links in the chat during our conversation tonight. Will you please do me a favor? Visit their links, visit their social media, follow them on Instagram, check out their website. What I would suggest you do is continue to look at the website. You're going to find announcements on the release of the app. And then what I would really encourage you to do is download this app when it becomes available and begin to share it with others so that they can find these other safe places. And then tune in every Thursday night, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard, right here on the Circles app, where Stephen and Megan are going to be sharing more. Stephen, Megan, thank you for being my special guest tonight. I appreciate you both so much.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, everyone.
You're very welcome. Lastly, friends, if you've enjoyed the conversation tonight, would you do me a favor? At the close of our room, you're going to have a chance to rate the room, share your feedback and comments. Would you please do so? We do share that feedback with Stephen and Megan, so let us know your thoughts. Would also encourage you right now, while we still are all together, press and hold Megan's avatar and Stephen's avatar and choose follow. That way, when they have meetings on the app, you're going to get a notification and you can come. Friends, thank you for joining me. I'm Jeff Kroom. I've been your host here on Circles Masterclass. Stephen and Megan, thank you again for being our special guest. And good night and blessings to all who have listened tonight. We'll see you next time. Good night, everybody.